Yeah, how's it going? This week looking at Dorian by Men I Trust, just what a masterpiece. So usually I'll sort of transcribe everything and try it out on keys just to make sure everything sounds right before grabbing other instruments. But I thought it sounded so pure on the roads, so I hope you enjoyed. And before I jump into this tune, if you aren't familiar with the basics of modes or just want a refresher, check out this video linked below. And as always, theory analysis like this is just that, it's analysis and education. I'd wager men I trust writing this didn't consciously think about all this theory, but it's the way we as listeners and musicians hear it. So starting here on this 5 chord, our G major, it's only a triad though, and this kind of does two things. So one, it has more of like a tonic resolved sound than any dominant or predominant one. And as a result, it has this sort of ambiguous key center. So G major, it could be the 5 chord of C, it could be the 4 chord of D, or the 1 chord of G. It has, its 3 notes are in all 3 of those scales. So now to our 2 chord, D minor 7. And this sounds dope because it fills in that tonal ambiguity from last measure with this really strong F. So it's the 3rd of D, but it's also that all-important 7th of that G chord. Like musically, this G, we could have went to a D major 7 or a D dominant 7, but we didn't. And as a result of that, this tells us we're in the key of C for now. So you play those 2 chords again before resolving to, you guessed it, the 1 chord, which is C major. Add 9 on top. You might see what's happening again here. From what I can hear in the tune, this isn't a C major 9. That would imply we play this major 7. But rather, it's a C add 9, so we leave out the 7th. And just like in that G triad, the lack of a 7th gives us this sort of floaty, spacey, neutral, almost suspended tone. As opposed to if we had this major 9, that feels so much more resolved, and that isn't what we're going for here because our next chord is where we change scales into C Dorian. So these 16ths set it up perfectly, hitting this B flat that we purposefully omitted on our last chord. So now we're on this E flat major 7, which is it's just so Dorian. So recall that C Dorian is just C minor with a major 6th, which is also this B flat major scale starting and ending on C. The 2 notes that change from C Ionian to C Dorian, that's Ionian and here's Dorian, are that E and B flat. And this E flat major 7, you got both of them right there. So next we have this F major 6, add the 9th, F major 6, 9, nice sort of thing. And again, this maintains the idea of tonal uncertainty. So without its 7th, our ears don't really identify it with the strong function. Here it is with, or, and without that 7th. It's a lot more neutral. And lastly, this 4 chord, this F chord, it doesn't include the E and the B notes of a C major or Dorian scale, which bridges C Ionian and C Dorian. It exists in both scales. And this brings us right back to our C add 9. And this time, to bring us into our Dorian sounding E flat major 7, instead of the 16ths, we quickly play this D minor 7, which you might notice, similar to that F chord, acts as a bridge between Ionian and Dorian because it doesn't include the E or B. And just a side note, F major 6 is just D minor 7 in first inversion. So yeah, checks out. And now we're back on this E flat major 7, and then our F6, easy. So just real quick here, there's this pre-chorus where we stay in Dorian on these same 2 chords. And one thing notable here is how we slightly changed the melody from Ionian to Dorian. So before, over this G major and D minor, this melody has this natural E. But here, because we're in Dorian over this E flat major and F major 6 sort of sound, that E becomes an E flat. And finally, last note, throughout this whole song, we can kind of drone out on this G and D because, again, they exist in both Dorian and Ionian, so it kind of bridges them. And it kind of gives it that spacey sort of vibe. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, hope it helped, and had some fun with it.